Is China holding back rare earth magnets from companies tied to the U.S. military right now?
Yeah, Maria, I think that Wall Street Journal reporting is not very accurate. We haven't even finished the agreement, which we hope to have done by Thanksgiving. And I am confident that post our meeting in Korea between the two leaders, President Trump, President Xi, that China will honor their agreement. And if they don't, we have lots of levers.
Well, you told me after the meeting that you would likely have something signed the following week. We spoke right after that meeting in October. Are you saying that you do not expect the Chinese Communist Party to hold back rare earth minerals from military-related companies in America?
I am saying the agreement is that the magnets will flow freely as they did before April 4th.
Are you expecting them to resume the purchases of soybeans, or are they going to double-cross us on that as well?
Maria, we have lots of levers, and again, they've already started the purchases of soybeans. They've agreed for this buying season to buy 12 million tons, 25 million tons for the next 3 years after that, so a total of 87 million.
All right, that's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent with me yesterday, saying he's confident that Beijing will uphold the promise on rare earths and soybean purchases. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, good to see you. I guess I was skeptical, given that China has let us down so many times, and there was new reporting last week from the Wall Street Journal that they were holding back those rare earth minerals to any company tied to the Pentagon.
Yes, and there's a technical and a strategic issue in just what the Treasury Secretary said. The technical one is that there is a November 1 fact sheet issued by the White House which says that China will remove the October 9th end-user validation arrangement that it put in place. And in addition, the White House said that China will remove all rare earth restrictions put in place during the last 23 months. So we got to see if this Thanksgiving agreement matches the terms of the fact sheet. The strategic issue is that it's now clear that China is not meeting its soybean purchase requirements. And so the issue is, why should we be trying to document one part of the October 30 deal when China's made it clear that it's not going to honor the other part of it, which is soybeans?
Yeah, but I mean, there's also the Financial Times reporting, right? I mean, the FT reported last week that Alibaba is helping the Chinese military attack the U.S. in a cyber way, and that this was from a White House memo.
Yes, and then the thing here is that why should we allow Alibaba on our exchanges? Why should we allow Americans to deal with Alibaba? It should be on the entity list.
Yeah.
You know, our friend Roger Robinson has been talking about this for quite some time.
Yeah, he sure has.
We know that all Chinese companies are related to the Chinese military under the doctrine of military-civil fusion. So, yes, we need to get Alibaba off our exchanges immediately.
Yes. Do you believe that we can actually trust China in any of these deals? I mean, look, I recognize President Trump is walking a balance here, doesn't want to push China too far because we're very reliant on the supply chain out of China right now. But they haven't exactly been a good partner for the United States.
No, and they've violated every agreement with us, trade and otherwise. And they violated the Phase 1 trade deal of January 2020 that President Trump put in place. So they don't have a great track record with us. And that means the United States, if it's going to have an agreement with China, and that's a big if, we need to make sure that we use all of our leverage. And so far, we have not done so, as Treasury Secretary Bessent just said. We're not using a lot of our leverage right now.
Yes. Well, the U.S. is also facing this military technology race with China in the air and at sea. The U.S. Air Force moving on the next generation of F-47 fighter. While China scrambles to catch up, China is in the lead in the commercial drone market. But the word is that does not necessarily give them a military advantage. Beijing is wrapping up the first trial of its newest amphibious assault ship. That happened on Friday. It can launch both aircraft and landing craft, Gordon. The U.S. already has more amphibious assault vessels than China, but Beijing is ahead in overall shipbuilding and Navy size. President Trump has talked about getting the U.S. back into shipbuilding quite significantly just in the last few months, Gordon. Your thoughts?
President Trump deserves a lot of credit for ramping up American shipbuilding in a number of different ways, including partnerships with other countries such as South Korea at the Philadelphia boat yard. There are a lot of other things that the Trump administration is doing, and this is something that the Biden administration should have done. There was an obvious danger then and didn't do. So what we're seeing right now is a major upgrading of our ability to build ships. We built ships one a day in World War II, and we're nowhere near that now. And also, we've got a broken Navy, a Navy that the admirals just can't seem to administer well. We need a clean out there, and I think Secretary Hegseth is in the process of doing that.
Well, one thing that President Trump has been very effective at in terms of China is gathering allies to work with the United States. I mean, look what just happened with Japan. And the president had that great meeting with the new prime minister of Japan when he was in Asia 2 weeks ago. Now Japan is trying to de-escalate its issue with the new prime minister, Sanai Takahashi, telling lawmakers that a Chinese attack on Taiwan that threatens Japan could trigger a military response. The prime minister said this 1 week after meeting with Xi Jinping, agreeing to pursue stable bilateral ties. China is now demanding that she retract her statement while urging Chinese citizens not to travel to Japan. Beijing is also hinting at imposing sanctions on Japan, including restricting trade and suspending economic ties with Japan, Gordon. What did she say so wrong that if they invade Taiwan and it impacts Japan, then it would trigger a response?
On November 7th, the prime minister correctly said that the Chinese invasion of Taiwan would require a mobilization of Japan's self-defense forces. She's also said after that if China were to attack American ships that were trying to run a Taiwan blockade, that Japan would also have to come to the aid of the United States. Those are two very important statements. The Chinese are enraged. What it does is that Japan said, I'm not afraid of China, basically saying, look, if China invades Taiwan, it's not going to be able to isolate the island. It's going to have countries in the region come to Taiwan's aid. And that is a very important statement. Now, the Chinese reaction, including that maritime enforcement patrol yesterday at the Senkaku Islands, also, the Chinese Consul General's statement that he wants to assassinate the Japanese prime minister if she decides to go forward and help Taiwan. That's completely unacceptable. And we need to hear the United States say that because Japan is our ally and supporting us. We need to support Japan, too.
Yep, great point. All right, we will leave it there. Gordon, always great to catch up. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
Gordon Chang. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Well, Wall Street billionaires are scrambling for a plan B after far-left Zohran Mamdani's mayoral victory. Business titans, including Steve Schwartzman, Jamie Dimon, Larry Fink, they met privately with President Trump at the White House and reportedly expressed interest in backing Elise Stefanik for governor in 2026. A Stefanik win could derail Mamdani's high-tax, freebie-laden socialist agenda. Meanwhile, President Trump says a meeting with Mamdani is in the works.
The mayor of New York, I will say, would like to meet with us and we'll work something out. But he would like to come to Washington and meet, and we'll work something out. We want to see everything work out well for New York.
Well, Jerry, I very much wish that I could be, somebody serving drinks or something at that meeting so I could see what was being said there. Although President Trump is interesting. He'll meet with anybody, and he'll actually be constructive with anybody, even somebody he called a commie during the campaign.
It's great they're talking.
So what do you, can he,
It's great they're
can
talking.
the president do some good here? Can he change Mamdani's mind at all?
Hell no.
Okay,
I don't
so
think
what's going to happen?
There's only the big fist. There's only the I'm withholding dollars until
you think that's
right?
going to be it? That's the whole meeting.
But that's the whole meeting. But I'm more interested in the bankers coming and kneeling before the king and saying, please help us get rid of Mamdani or blunt his impact, do something, bring in Elise Stefanik, get behind her, put her in the governor's mansion. I do wish, though, that these bankers would have the same message out of both sides of their mouth, because privately they're saying, we've got to get rid of Mamdani. But publicly, they're saying, well, we're so glad to meet you, Mr. Mamdani, and, welcome to New York, welcome to leadership in this big, fine city. I think they
You want no more Mr. Nice Guy. You want them to say out loud what they say.
I think what's going on is they have a lot of people who are consumers of their business products, who are in that age category, even here in New York City, who voted for Mamdani, and they're trying to make those people happy. I just think that if what they really feel is anxiety over this, they should communicate it publicly.
Taylor, what do you think?
Love the conversation. There's the saying, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. So if they want to have a conversation, great. I don't think that Trump would cave due to some little conversation with Mamdani and be like, okay, you're right, great meeting, here's the money. So let's have a meeting. Maybe Trump can tell him, this is a city I love, here are the options.
Yeah.
I'm happy to watch you fail, or here's, in my business experience, here's what works. Maybe Mamdani listens, maybe he doesn't, and then may the best man win. May the best policy win, and we will see which policy keeps New York on top or not. So I'm actually happy that they're having a conversation. Let's see how it goes.
What do you think, Tegan?
I disagree with Larry Kudlow. Elise Stefanik, if she wins the governorship, isn't going to fix problems that all the problems that would potentially be created by Zoran Mamdani as the mayor of New York City. And I hate this, behind the scenes, backroom dealing nonsense.
Does it play right into the left's argument about the whole city when that happens? The backroom stuff?
They should be standing, side by side and supporting President Trump. Diamond, he's not a Republican. And the central issue will be crime. And I've said this before. What will drive revenue into the toilet is if Zoran Mamdani does not fight crime. Jesse Tisch, the head of the NYPD, is it still up in the air whether
supposedly they met, but she didn't say whether she was staying or not.
Up in the, who is going to be the head of the police department? I've heard about people who are actively campaigning for the job. Nah, they're okay. I've heard about this from former police officers. They're okay, but they are starting to sound and speak like Mamdani about letting people out of prison. That will drive tourist revenue away. That will drive hotel revenue down. And where are these CEOs going to be when crime goes up and they're putting their employees at risk?
Yeah.
That's my central issue is crime. And the governor can't, really do anything about it other than jawbone the mayor.
Can I make just a very quick point? We were in London last week, listening to their news headlines. The country just got rid of all of their police commissioners. They're just going to let, the mayor and the councils run the police departments, run the issue of crime in that country. Imagine that. Is that where we're going next? I don't think Great Britain is an example you want to follow.
All right, Jackie, can the president straighten out Mamdani? What's he going to do here?
I'll get to that in 1 second.
All right.
I want to make a comment on the bankers, which is that most of them lean left, and it's usually for the purposes, if you look in their commentary, of social justice. That's because they make so much money that if they have to pay a little more, they don't really see it in their bottom line. But they should have been thinking about this all along, because as we've slowly been moving, and it doesn't happen overnight, and each progressive candidate becomes more and more left-leaning and more radical, this is how you end up with a Mamdani. So to be upset about it now, but to have been on that side promoting it the whole time is a little hypocritical for me. So that's one piece of this. On the Trump-Mamdani thing, I don't know if you guys saw the exchange live in Florida on the tarmac before Trump got on Air Force One last night. He made some really important points on the economy. He was talking about sanctions on countries that do business with Russia. He was talking about Venezuela and the drug trade and all these different things. But he was hysterical with the reporters. There was one reporter, and he literally said to her, "What outlet are you from?" And she said, and he said, oh, yeah, okay. And I'm paraphrasing here, not exactly, but he said something like, you're a horrible reporter. And he called somebody else out. And we were sitting on set last night. We were laughing. I mean, he was just in rare form. So where am I going with this? Mamdani's not going to come into his office and, not be called out, especially it's not in public, it's behind closed doors. So if he says something completely ridiculous, he is going to be called out, I believe, to the nth degree by a president who really doesn't mince words when he's thinking something. It just comes right out of his mouth. I think Trump is going to read him the riot act.
You think he's going to walk out of there with eyes wide like a deer in the headlights?
He's going to get Zelensky'd.
Okay.
At least his go-to is smiling, apparently. So when Trump is mocking him openly to his face and ribbing him, like shivving him between the ribs, figuratively, he can just smile like, oh my God, I can't believe that he's doing this to me. Oh, and he's just gonna like shrink on the inside. I can't wait.
It'll be a Mamdani grimace in the Oval Office.
Joining me now is the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Secretary, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We've got so much to get to with you, and I want to get your take first off on that prediction from the CEO of Omaha Steaks. What is meat going for right now? $4 or $5 a pound? He's talking about $10.
Well, that's right, and I sure look forward to talking to him. I saw him on your show. We had it on in the office on Friday. I thought he was very well spoken. I do believe, though, that his forecast is not going to be correct. Of course, no one knows really, but the idea that we won't get prices down until 2027, I think there are a couple of important factors here, Maria. The first is this, that we are suffering from the last administration's literal war on cattle. If you remember, they wanted to reduce the herd sizes because they believed that cattle caused climate change. I mean, that wasn't that long ago that was sort of a common narrative. So lots and lots of issues there as we rebuild the herd based on the devastation of the last administration's policy. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there is no doubt, because of drought and that reason and others, that we are at a low herd size. Now, you marry that to the fact that we have an 8% increase in protein and beef demand in the market. People want more beef. It's extremely healthy. And as Secretary Kennedy and I move toward releasing the new dietary guidelines and pivoting a lot of the food, the government-run food supply a lot through USDA, you're going to see even more and more demand for beef. Then on top of that, we've got the screwworm south of the border. So our ports have been closed almost since the late spring, where we haven't been moving about 1 million head of cattle across the border of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona from Mexico. And again, you're in this perfect storm that we're in. But the Trump administration has released a new plan. We are moving toward opening up 5 million acres of grazing land. We're obviously at some point soon going to be reopening the borders. We've got screwworm under control south of the border. Still a couple more things before we get there, but we're getting close. And the president is hyper focused on this. So our numbers and our formulas are showing that prices will start coming down as soon as next spring and certainly by summer and fall of next year.
Well, thank you for that explanation. That was very good and, of course, understandable as far as what's going on here. I think meat right now is going for about $6 a pound. So we'll see about that prediction. But what about the soybean purchases, Secretary? I mean, China is now reportedly slow-walking the American soybean purchases. Look, they've done this before. But President Trump had that trade truce with Xi Jinping. And now we see USDA data shows only 2 purchases bought in 6 weeks as China's stockpile surged to multi-year highs. Brazil now supplying nearly 80% of the imports. Analysts say Beijing is using soybeans as a geopolitical bargaining chip as American farmers wait for the 12 million tons China committed to buy by year end. The secretary, though, told me that he's confident Beijing will honor the promise. Watch this. Are you expecting them to resume the purchases of soybeans, or are they going to double-cross us on that as well?
They've already started the purchases of soybeans. They've agreed for this buying season to buy 12 million tons, 25 million tons for the next 3 years after that, so a total of $87 million. And then we have lots of other trade agreements that call for soybean purchases. I do believe it's very unfortunate they made pawns out of our great soybean farmers, but we believe that we have remedied that. If you look, prices of soybeans are way up since the meeting in Korea, and I think they will honor this.
So, Secretary Rollins, to be fair, Secretary Bessent said that the deal's not done yet and that they should have a signed document by Thanksgiving. It could be that that's why we see this slow walking. But what are your thoughts on the soybean purchase?
You know, I certainly listened with interest, and I talked to Scott a lot. He is an incredible leader for this administration and for the president's vision. Our entire cabinet, I know you and I have talked about, is just hand in glove on all of these issues. It's such a joy to work with Scott and the entire cabinet, and of course the president. I believe that what Scott is saying is 100% right. The president has said over and over that he will not leave our soybean farmers and frankly our farmers in general out in the cold on this. He has been absolutely resolute and almost a dog on a bone, making sure that our soybean farmers and other farmers are at the top of all these trade deals, and certainly Secretary Bessent has as well. So I listened with interest to Scott over the weekend with you and last week, saying we're still very confident that when the Chinese committed to buying 12 metric tons, that they are going to do that, 12 million. And so I see that moving forward. They have begun to buy a little. I think the nervousness comes in is that 12 million is a lot, and we've already, I think, just got about 330,000 out. But we'll get there, and I think the president has said over and over his relationship with President Xi is very strong. Secretary Bessent, we're going to get that deal signed. It's not even signed yet, and then we're off to the races. So I think that's what we're going to see very soon.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know President Trump loves the farmers. I love when he talks about the farmers. He really wants to ensure that they're getting a fair shot. Look, let's talk about the reopening of government. Secretary SNAP benefits flowing again after the 43-day shutdown left millions waiting for their November payments. What can you tell us about the resumption of business? The USDA said all eligible families getting their full benefits today, while the Trump administration announces an overhaul of that program. You're requiring every SNAP participant to reapply as part of a crackdown on fraud. You pointed out data from 29 states showing 186,000 deceased individuals were still receiving benefits. 120 people under arrest for fraud so far. On top of that, New York requirements and a $186 billion budget cut also taking effect. So what? Somebody died and their heirs started receiving their SNAP benefits? Secretary, what happened?
It's just incredible. And, you know, within the first hour of me being sworn in February, this was one of my very first things that we did. We sent a letter to every state. We said business as usual is over. The status quo is no more. We know that the SNAP program is rife with fraud, but it's all anecdotal. This was last February, that we have no data. How is it true that the taxpayers through the federal government fund this $100 billion program every single year, but we don't even know whether it's being done correctly, what the accountability looks like? We want that data ourselves. As I mentioned, 29 states complied, mostly the red states. And what we have found since we started getting that data late spring of this year is just stunning. As you mentioned, 186,000 deceased individuals receiving benefits, 500,000 people getting more than two times the benefit. So they're getting it in one place and then they're getting it in another place. The same person. We found thousands of individuals that were getting benefits in 3 to 4, 5, 6 different states. I mean, it is one thing after another. And this is just from the red states. Can you imagine when we get through litigation and we get that data from California, New York, Oregon? We know under Biden, the program increased 40%. Of course, we believe they were trying to buy the election by pushing more and more money out without any accountability. So this is what we're trying to bring under control. And listen, we always knew it was going to be a really big deal. We knew that it was stunning what was happening. But what the shutdown did, that sort of unintended consequence of the Democrats shutting down the government over the last 43, 45 days, is that one of their favored programs is now in the eye of the average everyday American who says, this is not okay. Go fix this. My taxpayer dollars should not be spent for this sort of fraud and abuse, and taking it out of the mouths of families that really need the program. there are vulnerable families in America that need this program that aren't getting it because of the fraud and the abuse that now we're going to work to fix.
Unbelievable. I mean, at a minimum, it's embarrassing that nobody looked at this. And it's just like on autopilot, right? And you have to wait for the Trump administration to come in and start looking under every rock. And I would also say it's a massive dereliction of duty, not just from the last administration, but from Congress. How does this happen?
It is absolutely remarkable. And I remember, Maria, going through the confirmation process. And when I did, and I had great conversations with all the Democrats on the Senate Ag Committee. I mean, I was voted 22-0 out of committee, so had really good conversations about the importance of this program. But so many of those Democrats in the Senate Ag Committee would say, we need more money for SNAP, we need more money for SNAP. And I remember sitting in that meeting and saying, I just can't believe that's true. The amount of money that's being spent. This was before, obviously, I'd taken the job and was sworn in and confirmed. But even in those initial conversations, I had seen the growth in the program and knew that just couldn't be correct. But now that the hood is up on the car, the lid has been taken off, it's a whole new day. And I'm excited about it because I think we're going to be able to serve the taxpayers. We're going to be able to serve, the entire country and make the government better, but also serve those families that actually need this program. And that's what's been lost in all of this.
Well, you needed a business sentiment in there. I mean, having a businessman in the Oval Office has a lot of implications and impact. Secretary, that's great. Good to see you this morning. Thank you. Brooke Rollins this morning. Thank you so much. All right, we'll see you soon. Our hot topic of the hour. Cheryl, thank you so much. President Trump unveiling his affordability push for Americans during a speech yesterday at the McDonald's Impact Summit in Washington. Watch this.
This is also the golden age of America because we are doing better than we've ever done as a country. Prices are coming down and all of that stuff. Nobody has done what we've done in terms of pricing. We took over a mess. We had the highest, think of it, the highest inflation in the history of our country. They say 48 years it was the history of our country. And now we have normal inflation. We're going to get it a little bit lower, frankly, but we have normal. We've normalized it. We pledge to every family and every small businesses that I will not rest until you are richer, stronger, more successful, happier, till you've gotten a piece of the American dream.
The president speaking to a crowd of McDonald's owners, operators, and suppliers, joking that he was the first former McDonald's fry cook to become president of the United States. He's referring to that iconic campaign stop where he worked the drive-thru of Mickey D's. Back in the Oval Office, meanwhile, the president giving an update on when Americans will get that $2,000 tariff dividend check. Watch this.
We're going to be issuing dividends later on, somewhere prior to, probably in the middle of next year, a little bit later than that, of thousands of dollars for individuals of moderate income, middle income. We're going to pay down debt. We have a lot of money from tariffs. If we didn't have tariffs, this nation would be in serious trouble. And we've taken in tremendous amounts of money. And you know what's more important than that? We've protected our businesses from being raided like we did with the chip business. Now we're bringing them all back.
Well, the president makes a really good point about tariffs. Back in April of this year, there was so much hysteria over tariffs. Now, people are worried that the tariffs are going to go away because there's hundreds of billions of revenue that the president has been using. Your reaction?
Yeah, look, I think this is great. I think it's important, and it's what you mentioned, right? People were actually told to fear President Trump's tariff policy. Those that didn't understand what was coming were terrified because people in the fake news wanted them to know Donald Trump was wrong and this was going to hurt them and hurt our country. And the reality is the opposite. And now the American people will see that, they will feel that, and they will know again that the media continues to lie to them if it means hurting Donald Trump, no matter what it does for the American public.
Yeah, it's incredible to me that, the country is now focused on affordability here, and the president is using affordability buzzwords. This was his priority from day one. I mean, he walked into the Oval Office and he wanted to have a priority of growth, and that meant reining in inflation.
It takes time, and to his credit, I mean, he's doing all the right things. The problem is he inherited a mess at the end of the day. And the reality is this will take a little bit more time. I think, where he's focused right now, the president in general is on the lower end. How do we decrease or try and decrease these prices? But The reality is he's on the energy front. He's done fantastic, and he's doing all the right things.
Well, I mean,
right
I
now.
spoke to Scott Bessent on Sunday, and the Treasury Secretary made a point of saying that the president needs congressional approval for these $2,000 checks. So I'm just wondering if we're actually going to go through another fight over this, Elizabeth.
More than likely, considering midterms are coming up, and Democrats, as we know with this shutdown, just proved it's not about the American public, it's not about their constituents, it's not about who put them in these positions of power that they're in. It's about trying to beat Donald Trump, which is all that it's been about since 2015 when he first announced. So we could hope that they listen to the people of their own districts who tell them, please, we need these checks. We want the government to stay open. We want the country to excel no matter who's in the Oval Office. But you never know with them because they have a midterm fight ahead, and it's all that they think about.
Yeah, and the truth is there could be another fight come January 30th.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
when the current funding bill runs out. So.
But giving more money away is not necessarily, I think, the answer here. It's good policy over time.
Absolutely.
Fox Business Alert, the 1,000-point market swing where the early rally was completely torched has investors' heads spinning. But NVIDIA's Jensen Huang is looking skyward after his company's third-quarter earnings smashed expectations. Now, look, let's be clear. NVIDIA has not escaped being bitten by the jaws of today's volatility. At its highs, it was at 196. It's at 181 right now, lost 5% of gains and is now down 2.6%. But the AI chip king's revenue surge shows its business is charging forward. It is the premier seller of the brains running the AI world's ambitions, and that's without access to China's $50 billion chip market. I spoke with the leader of the $4.5 trillion company from Washington, D.C., where he was conspicuously missing his leather jacket for an appearance at the U.S.-Saudi Investment Forum. Considering his blowout third-quarter report, I asked Jensen how the current quarter looks, when and how smoothly will NVIDIA's new Rubin chip roll out, and whether he's worried about an open AI bubble. Jensen, thanks so much for joining us. Wow, I mean, you posted the biggest beat in years, raised guidance. Here's what jumped out. $51.2 billion of your $57 billion revenue number came from the data center chip sales. That is just monstrous. I'm so curious to know, what's the largest single order to date that you've gotten?
Oh, my gosh. I don't know. They're all in the billions. You know, they all have to be in the billions in order to add up to 51. And so I don't know exactly which one. But one of the things that is really great about NVIDIA's architecture is that we're so diversified. You know, we run AI is not just one thing. It's not just one language model or one chatbot. AI is a system of models, and you could use it for, of course, chatbots, but you could also use it for physics and biology and chemistry and, of course, robotics and self-driving cars. And even within language models, there's so many different architectures. NVIDIA's architecture is the only one in the world that runs literally everything. And yesterday, we announced a big partnership with Anthropic, and now we're the only architecture in the world that runs every single premier AI model, as well as every single open source model, and of course, every single version, modality of model. And so our versatility makes it possible for us to have a lot of different customers. And for all of those customers, we can bring them a lot of other customers that ultimately use their cloud capabilities.
Yeah, it feels like all roads are leading to NVIDIA. How are orders for your next generation chip, the Rubin, trending? And are you still on track to ship them at the end of 2026?
Well, I announced at GTC that starting this year, because we started shipping Blackwells, over the course of this year through the end of next year, we have visibility of $500 billion worth of Blackwell and Vera Rubin. And we'll start shipping Vera Rubin in Q3 timeframe of next year. The silicon is back. It is working wonderfully. Engineers across NVIDIA are bringing up the system. It's doing it beautifully. And we're on track for volume production in the Q3 timeframe of next year. In the meantime, I announced that we have $500 billion worth of visibility, but in the last 30 days, we announced some major new wins that were not included in that $500 billion. So we're adding, of course, the Anthropic opportunity. We're adding Elon's xAI now being deployed in Saudi Arabia. We announced a partnership with Humane, and those GPUs have been licensed, and they're going to be deploying in Saudi Arabia. And we also announced that AWS is going to also build 150,000 GPU AI infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. All of those are all net new. And so orders are still coming in. And so it's going to be a pretty busy year for us the next year.
It sounds like then the current quarter is going to be crazy good. Can I say that? What do you think?
Well, we guided to a much larger quarter next quarter. And so the guidance that we provided is crazy good. I would agree with that. And but, we're in the beginning of a very long-term build out of the fundamental infrastructure of humanity, which is computing. As you know, we reinvented computing for the first time in 60, 70 years. And so all of the computers that have been installed around the world is being modernized to accelerated computing, NVIDIA's GPUs, and to artificial intelligence. And so this build out is going to last us many years to come.
It was exactly a year ago, and this is why I ask about Rubin orders, et cetera, because it was a year ago that you and I spoke about the problem a lot of companies wish they had. Blackwell orders were pouring in from the firehouse so fast, demand outweighed supply. What specifically have you changed to prevent any bottlenecks when Rubin rolls off the Taiwan semi-assembly line?
Well, we're not going to be caught flat-footed too many times, and we now have a much better understanding of the scale.
Yeah.
And the breadth, the diversity of our customer base. We've done a really good job planning our supply chain. We now have the largest supply chain of any company in the world. We work with TSMC, of course, manufacturing in Taiwan, and then also very proudly, for the first time here in the United States, we work with every single memory vendor now. We have 3 different sources, 3 gigantic sources of really complicated memory. And every system maker in the world are partnering with us. And so we've been planning for the Vera Rubin launch, and we've done a really good job getting set up for that. It's going to be a really big year next year.
So in September, you made a minor investment in Intel. Would you consider moving some of your physical manufacturing to Intel's foundry business? I mean, just to spread your bets?
Well, the most important thing we could do for Intel is something that only we can do. We could create opportunities for the Intel architecture and not only help them build products that are unique in the world, connecting NVIDIA's ecosystem to the Intel ecosystem, but also be a really large customer of Intel's. And so we are able to do something that nobody else can. We also invested in them, as you know, and it's a great honor for us to be able to invest in one of the United States' great companies, and we want American semiconductor companies to be strong, and this is something that we can do.
None of the chips that you are selling right now are going to China, at least not through legal channels. There is the black market, certainly, but I mean, ByteDance, Tencent, they used to buy hundreds of thousands of your chips, but President Trump is still curbing advanced chip exports to China. Read your chips. And on the Chinese side, President Xi Jinping has basically called for a fatwa on U.S.-made chips. So what can you do? You're in D.C. right now. You speak to President Trump. What light has he given you for the end of the tunnel when you can eventually sell to China again?
You're right that we haven't sold anything to China. Remember, NVIDIA's chips are not little tiny potato chips. These are 2 tons. Each one of our GPUs is a rack that's 2 tons large, or even the smaller versions of our racks are hundreds of pounds. And so it's not easy to smuggle. It's also requires really complicated networking and really complicated software. So it's not something that's easily smuggled. People talk about smuggling, but it's incredibly hard to do. And we chase down every opportunity, every single time that somebody's reported something, and it's just not been true. And so I think but separately, our situation currently is that it is clear that we really need America to go back into the Chinese market to be able to compete there. It's good for the American people. It's good for the American tech stack. It's also good that we are able to compete in China so that we could also win around the world. And so I think it's great for America to be able to go back into China. It's also really good for China market to be able to access the world's best technologies. It's good for their ecosystem. It's good for their industry. And so somehow we're going to continue to advocate and inform both governments. And, at the moment, I'm forecasting China's sales to be 0. It's 0 for next quarter, it's 0 for the quarter after that. We're assuming it's going to be 0. If we're able to break through on both sides of the ocean and with both governments, Of course, China is going to be a very large market. It's about $50 billion this year. By the end of the decade, it's probably $150, $200 billion large, considering how fast AI is growing. It is really unfortunate that the American companies can't participate in that. It's a very significant source of revenue. That revenue would allow us to invest even stronger, even faster. And so I hope that we'll have the opportunity to go back in. But at the moment, we just have to assume it's zero.
All right. You know, I do have to ask you, because this has come up, and this is not going to be a surprise to you that I'm asking about it, but there's some questions about these round-tripping deals that really start to look, well, the term everybody's using is circular, but they're related party transactions. Even your own filings have said that you have basically increasingly concentrated sales to, last quarter, it was 6 customers. There are filings that saying this quarter, it's now 4 big customers. I know you're not going to tell me who those customers are, but it's pretty obvious they're very much the hyperscalers. What if any of these companies, Jensen, suddenly scales back for whatever reason? Have you modeled for that? Because it could spook the markets. And again, people are asking this question about, oh, NVIDIA gave OpenAI $100 billion, and in turn, OpenAI is going to buy your chips with ostensibly some of that money. It's a question. Tell people why they shouldn't be worried. First of all, we haven't given a penny yet. And all of the revenues that we're projecting for next quarter and for next year, if you just think about the level of investment that we would make in each tranche, and none of it is forecasted at the moment in the $500 billion that I'm talking about, the investments that we're making is a tiny percentage of our overall revenues. They have to go raise the vast majority of the funding that they need. It's raising through equity, through other investors, and of course, every single round has been oversubscribed for OpenAI and for Anthropic and for XAI. They've been all oversubscribed, so they certainly don't need our investment. Our investment is intended to enable us to deepen our partnership with several of the most consequential companies in history. It allows us to work very closely with them, support their growth, but most importantly, expanding our ecosystem. I'm just saying, because you never know when payments get missed, and I know that payments stretch out and the credit goes way out, but this is just something that people are worried about. I know that you have really been so incredibly excited about basically the integrated AI world. What, though, because we've talked about that, what makes you so thrilled about it, but what worries you about a fully AI integrated world? Well, the things that we have to start with is we have to make AI function safely. You know, things have to work well. If a car doesn't work well, it's unsafe. If a microwave doesn't work well, it's unsafe. And so the first thing that we have to do is make AI work really, really well. You know, one example is that it doesn't hallucinate, random things, that it's grounded in truth. One of the big breakthroughs of the industry in the last couple of years is how incredibly good the AI is about doing research whenever it is uncertain. It can go find the ground truth so that it functions properly. It reasons, it thinks. All of these things enable the AI to, number one, function safely. And as we finish, would you agree to support regulation on that? Oh, yeah, of course. Remember, AI is, in the final analysis, an application use case. And just as every healthcare product has regulation, every consumer product has regulation, every transportation product has regulation, whatever industry, whatever use case, whatever application it is, it should be held up to the same regulations. Now enhanced for artificial intelligence, and so that's to regulate the end use of AI, and to be mindful about applying regulation to the fundamental technology, because the technology wants to advance quickly, so we could do all the things that I mentioned earlier, but the end use should surely be regulated. Great to hear from you, Jensen. Thank you. I know it's been an incredibly busy time for you. That's not going to change, it feels like. We appreciate you coming on. Thanks, Liz. Great to see you.
Welcome back. The Senate approving a House-passed bill which requires the Justice Department to release all files related to convicted sex offender and disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. The bill now heads to the president's desk after being unanimously approved in the Senate. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer issuing subpoenas to J.P. Morgan and Deutsche Bank for all of Jeffrey Epstein's financial records. The chairman also requesting additional documents from U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General Gordon Rea. Joining me now is the man himself, Kentucky Congressman, Chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer. Mr. Chairman, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So what are you looking for? And tell me what you expect, how this plays out.
Well, we really don't know. We're going to follow the money. That's what we've been instructed to do. This is a very serious, credible investigation. We want to know the truth. We want to give the American people answers. If there's a list of people who were participating in sex trafficking, we want to know who they are, and we want to hold them accountable. We want to find justice for the victims, as well as to try to find out why the government failed so many people. So I think with the bank records, we'll be able to find accounts, we'll be able to trace the money and determine if there were people that were paying Jeffrey Epstein for services, or if Jeffrey Epstein was paying and purchasing women in other countries or wherever. I mean, these are some of the worst crimes I've ever seen inflicted on young women, and it just doesn't seem like the federal government over the past 2 decades did anything to help these victims.
You know, I don't think it's lost on anybody that here you have banks potentially involved in, you know, enabling this sex offender, and yet who did they debank in 2020?
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah.
My goodness.
By all accounts, the banks were notifying the government. The banks suspected that this type of activity was taking place with Epstein, by all accounts. So, you know, we're gonna try to determine what the banks knew. But the banks did what they're supposed to do. If they filed those suspicious activity reports, then it's up to the federal government to follow through. So there are many steps along the way where I believe these women, these victims or survivors, whatever you want to say, they were let down by the federal government. The federal government didn't do its job in protecting people, in identifying criminal activity and doing something about it.
Do you have a read on how many suspicious transactions took place at these banks?
Yeah, there were hundreds and hundreds of them.
Hundreds and hundreds.
But again, Epstein was a big operator. I mean, you look at his estate; it's worth nearly $1 billion. So he had a lot of financial activity. We don't know a lot. All we know is he's a financier. When we get these bank records, we'll do like we did in the Biden investigation. We'll be able to follow the money. We'll be able to identify different LLCs and different corporations to see where his money was coming from and where it was going.
Are we going to see the client list?
You know, I don't think there's an actual Epstein list, but if we're able to follow the money, maybe we can construct a list.
I see. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi's office is reviewing all of the pardons signed by former President Joe Biden's auto pen. And this following your committee's report, which argued that any executive actions that were signed by that auto pen without the written proof of Biden's approval should be considered null and void. What are we talking about? What should be considered null and void?
Well, look, we subpoenaed all of Joe Biden's records, his calendar. There were never any meetings blocked off for him to discuss these pardons with anyone. His emails, there was never any email correspondence between the Department of Justice or between Biden's staff or between Jeff Zients, who was the only one we could ever find, his former chief of staff, who authorized the use and heard directly from Joe Biden, according to Jeff Zients. So there's no record that indicates Joe Biden participated in any way, shape, or form in the decision-making of the thousands of pardons that were issued using his auto pen. So it's not necessarily just the use of the auto pen on legal documents, which you're not supposed to do. It's the fact that Joe Biden was, his cognitive decline was being covered up by his inner circle. I don't think anyone in America doubts that now. But also, there's no records that indicate that he had participated in any decision-making. And that's the problem. Only the President of the United States has the authority to issue pardons, not some unnamed bureaucratic staffer, which is what the case was with the Biden administration.
Well, there were also sort of random pardons. Like, for example, why would you pardon Liz Cheney? I mean, what was that pardon about? Did they destroy evidence for the January 6th committee? Have you gotten into that?
Well, that's being investigated by Barry Laudermilk and one of the House administration subcommittees. But at the end of the day, I think whoever was running the White House, Jeff Zients, Jill Biden, whoever, Hunter Biden, I think they realized that the January 6th committee had a lot of liability. So the January 6th committee did everything they could to work with Joe Biden to hurt Donald Trump. I'm sure the deep state appreciated that, and they issued them pardons knowing that someday maybe a Republican investigator or any investigator that believes in the Constitution would dig up and see that the January 6th committee wasn't truthful, especially with the level of participation that the federal government had.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they issued pardons. They issued pardons for the January 6th committee, the Biden family, most of the deep state actors that were in charge.
By AutoPen.
Yeah, by AutoPen, all within the last 3 months of the administration, during the lame duck period, on days when Joe Biden was in the White House. So he was in the White House. They just had him stuck in the corner looking out the window, I guess, all day.
But they made sure to do it on days that he was in the White House. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
All of this is part of an overall fabric that I think the DOJ is trying to put together of conspiracy, beginning with Russia collusion, going into the impeachments, going into the Hunter Biden laptop, the Mar-a-Lago raid. Is January 6th part of that? Were they using January 6th to blow up this whole idea that Trump was an insurrectionist as a way to shut down speech and shut down any questions about the 2020 election?
Right. January 6th was a terrible day, but what we've learned is Pelosi didn't do her job, and what we learned is the federal government had a lot bigger role that day than we realized. They denied having any agents on the ground, and now it turns out there were dozens and dozens of agents, and we've all seen the videos.
In plain clothes.
In plain clothes.
And in Trump
And why
gear.
lie about it? If there was nothing nefarious, why be dishonest about it? And I wonder if the January 6th committee members knew. Did Adam Schiff know? Did Jamie Raskin, who's the most dishonest member of Congress by far?
More so than Adam Schiff?
That would be a good race, but I'll give Raskin the edge in that. And at the end of the day, did they know? And they tried to go along with the cover-up, because having that many agents on the ground and then lying about it, that's a red flag in anybody's book.
Wow.
So there's a lot about January 6th that we still don't know. We may never know. But one thing we do know is the federal government wasn't honest about the number of plainclothes agents.
And in terms of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, you sent subpoenas already to the banks. Do you want these chairmen and CEOs?
Well, right now we want
to testify.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. After we look at the suspicious activity reports, we're going to have specific questions about specific transactions and specific accounts. That's how, if there's no Epstein list, and we want to find out if there were people that were violating the law and who they were, we'll have to construct our own. If there's not an Epstein list floating around in the Department of Justice, maybe following the money, we can construct.
Well, it's interesting. The mainstream media was going wall to wall with Epstein while you all were reopening government. I was watching, the vote. You're all over there voting to reopen government, and it's wall to wall Epstein on CNN because some files were released. We'll see if they keep that up. Now that it's sort of broadening out into Democrats. But the Speaker, Mike Johnson, says that the House will vote this week to repeal a provision in the recent spending bill, which compensates GOP senators whose phone records were seized during the Arctic frost investigation. Another questionable situation. I spoke with the Speaker about it on this program last week. Here's what he said. Senate GOP adding a provision in the government funding package which allows senators to sue if their electronic records were obtained without their knowledge. Why are you against that addition?
Well, the optics of it are terrible. We all agree that Arctic frost was a horrific abuse of our judicial system, and it was an overreach, and we've got to bring accountability to those involved in it, and we have to make sure that stuff never happens again. But I think for sitting lawmakers to vote in themselves an ability to go cash in on something like that, to me, it was just a really bad look. And I think many of them regret it. I think some of them are coming out now saying that they will help us to repeal that provision. It should never have been dropped into our clean CR.
So he says he's going to fix it. It should not have been in the clean CR, Mr. Chairman.
I agree with Mike Johnson. Look, everything that the federal government did to those senators is terrible. I think what we need to do as a Congress is work with the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi to hold the people accountable for an abuse of power. But I do not believe that we need to get in the business of starting to compensate members of Congress for deep state abuses. As bad as they were, I don't think we need to. And like Mike Johnson said, It would have been different if this had been debated in the open and it was just kind of stuck in a continuing resolution, which isn't supposed to have stuff stuck into it.
Yeah.
So the whole process that it went about was bad. I like all those senators. They're some of our best members of Congress, but I'm going to agree with the Speaker on this. And I think most people in the House, Republican and Democrat, agree that shouldn't.
Especially since you wanted a clean CR.
Yeah, right.
Bottom line.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, it's great to see you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. Congressman James Comer here on set with us in Washington. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Now, great pleasure to bring Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick back to the show with a smile on his face. Mr. Secretary, it's wonderful to see you. You take a stab at this. You know, I read about this pessimism and all these websites and internets and this and that and polls that I don't believe for a minute. Howard, you're on the forefront of this whole. Why is there so much pessimism? What's going on here, Howard?
It's just fake news. You've got so many factories being built. You know, I know people talk about when the factories come online, but the construction jobs alone, you can't invest $3 trillion a year without driving our GDP off the charts. You're going to see 4s, you're going to see 5s, and you're going to see 6% GDP growth under this president because the factories coming home, the tariffs are bringing them home. You have never seen construction the way you're going to see it. And then when these factories come online, wow, are you going to see numbers nobody's ever thought possible.
You know, Secretary, it's not the last word, but just take today. The jobs report today came in basically twice as good as Wall Street predicted. Twice as good as Wall Street predicted. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, you know, it's just setting up for where we're going. You know, the big, beautiful bill starts January 1st. You start getting depreciation. The factories are going to come online. You are going to see job numbers in the second half of next year that are going to blow you away. And these are just the right kind of jobs. We've got to train these people. We've got to get those people in America into the workforce for these great paying jobs. And I think really America, the golden age, which Donald Trump talks about, he is literally saying we are going to build manufacturing in America, and these jobs are going to blow the numbers away.
Howard, should the Fed be cutting interest rates right now?
Of course they should. I mean, you've got really a beautiful economy. The economy can grow with lower rates. You know, these rates are high because of the inflation of the Biden administration. You've seen them all come off. Now you've got the president cutting prices across the board. We're going to drive affordability across the board. You know, he's focused, razor focused on affordability and driving it down. You're going to see inflation coming off. You're keeping energy prices low. You've got tax numbers coming in next year. I think rates should be at least 100 basis points lower. That will free up affordability in housing, and that will help America really reach its full potential.
What's your take on this tariff dividend distribution next year? It's not spawned a lot of enthusiasm on the Hill. The president continues to mention it. What does Howard Lutnick think?
Well, look, the president wants to make sure the American people understand that the tariffs are there for their benefit, right? That yes, it's going to drive down our deficit. Yes, it's going to make the country stronger, but he wants the people of America, the American people, to appreciate these tariffs. And he knows if he puts money in their pocket and says, look, this was paid for by the tariffs, they'll better understand how important this is for America. And so that's why he's talking about it. And, you know, he understands the American people the best, and he's easy to work for. I mean, today and every day, it's really amazing to work for. Today, he had all the freed hostages up to the White House. I mean, imagine that, all the freed hostages up to the White House. There is no president who could do the things that he accomplished.
You know, that's a point. Let's just pause there for a second. That's a very out-of-the-box point. How can a country as great as America, this is the greatest country in the world, all this, if you believe these lefty media, everyone's so pessimistic. Why? For Middle East peace that we never thought we'd see in our lifetime? I would say that's optimism. 135 million people, some odd, Howard, take my word for it, own stocks one way or another through exchange-traded funds and index funds. 135 million people. It's a little short of the entire workforce, okay? Jobs are rising. We just had a report today, roughly 100,000 private sector jobs. Where's the pessimism? Middle East peace? Record stock market for, by the way, unions, pensions, who are Democrats, they own stocks too. They're sharing in this. Jobs are rising. Streets are safer. The border is closed. I mean, where's this pessimism? I know the websites. You do too. I know the internet sites. I know the Twitter X sites. But does that mean we have to believe it? That's what I'm really asking you. Why is this stuff and you got to fight back. You got to go out and sell it better, Howard Lutnick. I guess fight for it. Let's follow the president's lead. You and Scott and Kevin and so forth. Maybe you just have to go out and sell the story better, Secretary Howard Lutnick.
Well, I'll give you an example. I had 2 weeks ago, I had Sean Fain. So he runs the United Auto Workers.
Right.
Okay?
I know.
And he called me and he said, I can't believe I'm calling a Republican Secretary of Commerce to tell him you have the best administration and you are fighting for the American auto workers. God bless you. I mean, who gets that phone call but Donald Trump's administration, right? We're out fighting for union workers. We're out fighting for the American people. It's their jobs that we care about. And Donald Trump has got American workers' backs. And we are going to deliver those numbers. We're going to deliver jobs, and we're going to deliver a great economy to the American worker.
All right, you got to sell it. You got to sell it. That's what I think. Just got to get out there. You're a good salesman. You know it. You come from Wall Street. You're a businessman. You got to go out and sell. Sometimes, you know, some products sell themselves. Other products need to be sold. That's the way I look at it. Now, Howard Lutnick, let me ask you something. Are you changing at the margins of trade policy? Because a lot of people were very, very happy. You pulled the tariffs on coffee and meats and fruits and bananas and whatnot. Those struck some people, and I was skeptical myself, a little bit punitive tariffs, not really reciprocal tariffs. So now you pull them, prices are going to come down. Is this a significant change in trade policy?
No, if you understand where Donald Trump comes from. So when we started this process on April 2nd, he wanted, as you know, trade deals. Let's just go make trade deals. If a country makes a trade deal, we'll give them coffee, we'll give them cocoa, we'll give them bananas, we'll give them papayas, we'll give them generic drugs, we'll give them all these different things if they do a trade deal with us to make sure our exporters, if you produce in America, you can export your goods. Finally, the president has got your back and let you manufacture in America and sell it. All right. And what happened is the president said, look, it's been 6 months. It's time. Let's just wipe the slate clean. If people haven't made deals with these smaller countries, it's okay. Let's cut the price on all these unavailable natural resources and let's focus on affordability. So what you're going to watch is the president's going to focus on the small things that touch the American's pocketbook and he's going to bring them all down. He's going to use the power of what he has created to bring these prices down so that by Christmas, the prices in America are lower and lower. And the people in America are going to feel that purchasing power coming back. They're going to feel the power. They're going to get a check next year, as the president discussed. The tax refunds are coming, and Americans are going to feel stronger and better about the leadership of Donald Trump in this economy. It's coming. He's focused on it, and he's going to deliver.
So one other, basically the last point. A lot of conservatives are concerned that too much government intervention in the private economy, buying shares of companies and so forth. But it turns out now, you tell me, okay, Secretary, but as I understand it now, you're not in favor of a sovereign wealth fund. That really is, you know, an idea that is for another day, if ever. I understand the rare earths. I understand the government helping out the rare earth companies. I approve of that. I think that's an emergency kind of situation. But by and large, putting government money into private corporations, I mean, if the Democrats come back into power, Howard, you know, Katie barred the door. That'll be socialism. They'll try to run the whole bloody thing. I don't believe that's what your philosophy is. I don't believe that's what President Trump's philosophy is. So basically, tell us you're not going to intervene. You're not going to try to run all these private companies, except in the case of national defense, like rare earths. Go ahead, Howard. Straighten the record out for us, please.
So let's just talk about the Intel deal, right? Biden gave, G-A-V-E, gave Intel, a $100 billion company, $10 billion.
Yeah.
Gave it to them. It's Christmas for shareholders. So all we did is said, look, if we're going to give you $10 billion, at least make it the benefit of the bargain. What's fair for the American people? Non-voting shares equal to that money. Come on. It's not Christmas. So I think what Donald Trump's view is, and it's, of course, absolutely my view, that if we're giving money, we need to get something for it. If we're not giving anybody money, then there's no issue. We're not going out looking for shares of companies or this kind of stuff. That's just not true. But if we are here giving you money, the American taxpayer at least has got to get a fair shake for it.
So it's fair to say a sovereign wealth fund is not on the table. It's fair to say there was a false rumor coming out of the Commerce Department that it was going to invest in private companies of quantum computing. It's fair to say you're not going down that road.
No, the CHIPS Act money, right, allows us to try to make sure we help young companies build in America really cool technology. Right? That is in the CHIPS Act money, and that's what we are going to do. We help some young companies in America build really cool technology, so that is good for America. But these are small potatoes. This is not, big size stuff. This is small potatoes. But the fact is, President Trump wants America to grow and build, and that's what he's focused on. He's not focused on trying to buy some shares in some companies. That's just silly nonsense.
All right, I just want to check. Those Democratic socialists are always looking over your shoulder, Howard Lutnick. You know that. Anyway,
problem.
No problem. Go out there and sell the heck out of this story. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, great pleasure to see you. Happy Thanksgiving and New Year's.
And now this, a comedian getting serious about the cost of air conditioning? Ooh, actor Jamie Kennedy says the problem has reached crisis levels. The man in question is Jamie Kennedy, sitting right next to me here in New York. What crisis about air conditioning? Explain.
Well, there was an agreement called the Kigali Agreement. And basically what they did is they came up with a new refrigerant. And this new refrigerant is supposed to help with the global warming and such, be better for the environment. The problem is it's more expensive, it's more flammable, it has PFAs, which are forever chemicals. It's manufactured outside of our country, and basically the world is taking 15 years to convert, so in the world, but they've given us, this country, only our country, 15 months. No, yes.
Where'd that come from?
Well, you tell me. And it started January 1st. It was done under the Biden administration. So come December 1st, we have 4 months before we have to have all of our stuff figured out.
Now, that's going to raise the cost of an air conditioning unit, surely.
A unit, the parts, but also the canister, $75 before the agreement. Now it can go up to $750 to $1,200. That's insane. Manufactured in China, shipped from Mexico. We get none of the benefits here for any of it. It's bizarre.
How come you've picked up on this? You're the guy who knows about the air conditioning crisis.
Well, how much of a problem is it that I'm actually talking about it? You know what I'm saying? Like me. Like, why am I? Because it's a real thing. It's going to affect. I was in a really great restaurant in LA, and they didn't have the air conditioning on. This is how I found out about it. And I asked them, and they said, well, it's really expensive. So it's going to affect that. What? Yes. They did not have it on, and I said, turn it on. They said, it's too expensive. Then they did. It's also going to affect. Imagine if you're an older person in Palm Springs, you got your retirement, you're living your life, your AC goes out. I mean, it's a real issue no one knows about.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the fact that you're talking about
it, I know.
That's a very important point, because you're not the air conditioning
at all. At all, but it's wild, and I care about certain things, so this is one of them.
I've got another one here. Jeff Dye.
Yes.
Okay. He's joined the growing wave of celebrities leaving Hollywood. Here's what he said about it. Roll it.
Gavin Newsom scares the shit out of me, and I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, he wants to run the whole country too.
It's wild.
Pretty wild. And
those fires were quite a wake-up call for even if, whatever you believe about the fires, the way it was dealt with was pretty scary.
It was not competent, that's for sure.
Even the aftermath.
Yeah, and
was not competent.
Do you see a lot of people leaving Hollywood? I know that business is down in Hollywood, having a real hard time. Are people really leaving?
There are a lot of people leaving. I mean, multi-generational families that I know that are actors and such have left. It's completely changed. There's a lot of difference. No productions are really shooting in LA anymore, just a few TV shows. But a lot of things. There's Rob Lowe talks about how he shoots a show in Ireland and it's cheaper than it is in America. So the good news is Netflix is buying a ton of real estate in Hollywood and they're converting them to their studios. But yeah, it's definitely changing.
Jamie Kennedy, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and alerting us to the air conditioning crisis. Now, I'm not mocking you. I'm not being sarcastic.
No, thank you.
I never heard of it until you came along.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you having me.
If you're not careful, we'll invite you back.
Oh, I'll make sure to shave.
You look great.
Jamie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Joe Biden's prices and his hikes cost a typical American family an estimated $33,000 and hit your workers and your customers and your small businesses. Very, very hard. The Biden administration started the affordability crisis, and my administration is ending it. My pledge to every family and every small business is that I will not rest until you are richer, stronger, more successful, happier, till you've gotten a piece of the American dream.
President Trump there unveiling his push for affordability in America Tuesday as the White House works to address the cost of America's housing crisis. The median age for all American homebuyers jumping to 59 years old. That's the median homeowner, according to the National Association of Realtors. Now, the share of first-time homebuyers now at a record low 21%, a median age of 40 years old for first-time homebuyers. A new analysis showing the cost of hidden home ownership, $16,000 a year. This is hidden ownership. It includes insurance, maintenance, and property taxes. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate sitting at 6.2%. That is a slight increase from a week ago. President Trump recently proposing the idea of a 50-year mortgage for Americans. I'll be speaking about all of this coming up when I speak with the founder and CEO of Pershing Square Capital Management. Bill Ackman will be here in the 8 a.m. hour. Don't miss that. First, though, joining us now is Housing and Urban Development Secretary Scott Turner. Secretary, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Tell us how you are tackling what people are calling an affordability crisis and a housing crisis.
Well, thank you, Maria. It's good to be with you. Well, first, when we came into this administration, our fiscal house was not in order. Inflation was at an all-time high. Interest rates were high. Mortgage rates were high. And so the first thing we've been doing at HUD is tackling the regulatory environment. One of the first acts we had was taking down the affirmatively furthering fair housing rule, which really made Washington a national zoning board. And so taking this rule down has restored local control. And I know the president talks a lot about the regulatory environment. Maria, one thing that your viewers should know, when you build a multi-family housing project, 40% of the cost of that is in regulation. And a single family project, about 20 to 25% of that cost is regulation. So tearing down the regulatory environment from a federal standpoint and also encouraging firmly that localities also take inventory of their regulatory environment, because that really is what cripples development and building.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why President Trump has made it a priority to roll back regulations.
Right.
But I guess, people are wondering about the supply. Is there anything you can do to create more supply? Isn't supply, a lack of supply, one of the big issues here?
Absolutely. Well, when you bring the cost down, the supply will go up. And another policy is our opportunity zone policy, which you're very familiar with. Opportunity zones have been very successful. About $90 billion of private money have been invested in opportunity zones, and hundreds of thousands, about 300,000 new housing units have been built in opportunity zones. So with the president and the One Big Beautiful Bill, opportunity zones are now made permanent. So the housing supply will go up, the costs will come down, and American people can achieve the American dream.
Your department is also probing how illegal immigrants have put a strain on the housing market. What can you tell us? You signed a memorandum with the DHS to end wasteful misappropriation of taxpayer money.
Absolutely.
For, quote, illegal alien exploitation of housing programs. You're also working with the Federal Housing Administration to crack down on government-backed mortgages for illegals. How do they get a mortgage if you're actually illegal in the country?
Well, Maria, during the Biden administration, there were over 12 million illegal aliens that came over the border, straining our housing supply and making the costs go up. And so we work with Secretary Noem at DHS, as you alluded to make sure that only American citizens are living in HUD-funded housing. We also also took away FHA-backed mortgages from illegal aliens during the Biden administration. They turned a blind eye. But we're going to keep the law to make sure that these mortgages, which are backed by the taxpayer, go only to the American people. And lastly, we are mandating that every public housing authority give us a comprehensive account who's living in every unit in taxpayer HUD-funded housing.
Wow. Actually, Davis, another impact of that wide open border.
Absolutely, which I always talk about. But when the secretary worked for the president last term, you did so much with opportunity zones, but also homelessness is one of your biggest issues. Yes. And we see it here. It's so much better than it was even a year ago. Are you seeing it better throughout the country?
Well, homelessness, with record funding, Maria, almost $80 billion. Under the Biden administration, about $12 billion was spent on continuum of care, which is the homeless policy.
So you're not encouraging anybody to try to get themselves in a better place by working?
No. Well, what we're doing is you look at record funding, but yet homelessness went up almost 33% over the last several years.
Wow.
And so what we've done is now take this Biden-era slush fund called the Continuum of Care and turned it into not just housing, but also treatment and transitional housing.
Yeah.
No one wants homelessness on their streets.
Of course.
We definitely don't want homeless on the street, but because we care, it's compassionate, common sense to use the American taxpayer dollar, not just to warehouse homelessness, but also to treat them so they can live a life of self-sustainability.
And that's why you announced a nearly $4 billion in competitive grant funding to reform homelessness programs. That would, of course, end that slush fund from the Biden administration. You're prioritizing the most vulnerable Americans. How do you do that? Tell us how you will, you say, restore accountability to these homelessness programs.
Well, again, so taking it from just housing to now housing and treatment. We have to put the axe head to the root. What is the root cause of homelessness? Mental illness, drug addiction, drug abuse. During the Biden administration, it was just warehousing. It was a homeless industrial complex, basically, a slush fund for nonprofits around the country. They were awarded because of the more people that they had in their system. Well, we want to award people for not only housing them, but treating them, transforming them, and getting them back to a life of self-sustainability.
Well, I mean, if I remember correctly, during the Biden administration, they were giving out drug kits with needles and all of that. And I thought to myself, why would you give a drug addict needles to continue taking drugs?
Right. Well, and that's the difference here under President Trump's leadership. We actually care about the American people. We don't want more people homeless. We don't want more people on the streets, more people dying of drug addictions. We want people literally to live in dignity, and if they do happen to pass away if they're homeless, to die in dignity. I have my uncle. We found him homeless several years ago. He was an American veteran.
Wow.
And because we were able to get wraparound services around him to treat him, the last 3 years of his life were the greatest 3 years of his life because he lived and died in dignity. That's what I want for the American people, to be able to live in dignity and to have a self-sufficient and self-sustainable life. And so that's why you see this paradigm shift.
Well, thank God for your efforts, for your uncle, certainly. But look, when we talk about what's going on in New York, you know, with these free buses ideas, I think it's going to be a free homelessness bus, because people who are homeless will get on the bus and just ride the bus all day long.
Yeah, we can't keep doing what we've been doing.
Yeah.
We can't keep running the same plays. You know, I played in the NFL, and we had a playbook. And the coaches would call certain plays, but if that play is not working, go to the playbook and get a new play. And so that's what we're doing now. It's just a different playbook.
I love that you were in the NFL. Thanks for reminding us of that. Secretary, it's great to see you.
Nice to see you.
All right, Scott Turner joining us here. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Let's welcome back to the show House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. It's great to see you, sir. What do you make of this? Democrats hope embarrassing material about Trump could be in the files. The president never been officially accused of wrongdoing in connection with this. He insists he fell out with Epstein years ago, that he hasn't spoken to him in 15 years.
Well, first, great to be with you, Liz. When it comes to the Epstein issue, Republicans, including Donald Trump, have been united on this from the beginning. We all want transparency. The president campaigned on it. Literally, we want justice. You heard our speaker say in one of the clips, we want justice for the victims. That's all it's ever been about for Republicans. We've already released, our oversight committee's released 65,000 documents. Liz, they're published, they're online. People can go look it up right now. The goal for Republicans and Donald Trump has always been justice for the victims. The goal for Democrats in this one, has been to get Donald Trump. And I got news for them. They're not going to get Donald Trump. They're going to get a lot of their own, it looks like.
Okay, is everything out there about what we know about Trump and Epstein? Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago reportedly around 2007, says they have not spoken in 15 years, says Epstein, quote, stole young women who worked at Mar-a-Lago, including Virginia Giuffre. Their friendship began in the late 80s. Trump was quoted in a 2002 New York Magazine profile of Epstein saying, quote, I've known Jeff for 15 years. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Now, Trump was listed on Epstein's jet 7 to 8 times between 1993 and 97, and Bloomberg is reporting the FBI was redacting names in the files, including possibly Trump. Why? Is it because he was a private citizen when this investigation took place?
Actually, if you want to look at the history of this, you've got Democrats who, if they would have had anything that implicated Donald J. Trump, they would have put it out in the last 4 years. Instead, they were entirely silent. They didn't do any of this work until Donald Trump gets in the office. And you know what? Donald Trump is the one that said he was going to release the records. He's been consistent on that from the beginning. That's exactly what's going to happen. And by the way, to show just how disingenuous these Democrats are, out of those 65,000 documents, last week they took 3. They cherry-picked 3 documents. And those 3 documents mentioned Trump's name. They're emails with Jeffrey Epstein. You don't know when they were done. You don't know why they were done. But you know what was really interesting about those 3 documents? They redacted the name of a victim who is public and has exonerated Donald J. Trump. This is not about the truth for Democrats. This is about trying to go after Donald J. Trump. And guess what? Democrats, whether it's Stacey Plaskett, who's going to be, there's a censure and removal motion that'll be voted on tonight because she was literally communicating with this child sex offender during an official hearing. He was literally texting her the questions to ask. She was asking the questions that he texted, and then he told her, great job. Or Hakeem Jeffries, who was soliciting Jeffrey Epstein back in 2013 for campaign funds. This is going to come back to haunt the Democrats who think this is their issue.
So what you're saying could backfire on them because the
I think it already is.
The White House put out a list of the Democrats' connections to Epstein. That Bill Clinton traveled on Epstein's aircraft 26 times. Democrats took donations from Epstein. Larry Summers, Obama's former National Economic Council director, Clinton's former Treasury Secretary, was texting Epstein from 2013 to 2019. This is after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted on sex offense charges, sex trafficking of minors. And Larry Summers has since said he'll step back from public life. Now, Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries, they don't want to talk about Epstein after what you point out, that Epstein was coaching Democrat Stacey Plaskett during that 2019 hearing featuring Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen, giving her advice on what to say. Do you think there's enough media coverage of the Democrat connections to Epstein?
No, not yet. Not yet. I mean, it's been interesting because only Republicans and Donald J. Trump have been trying. I mean, he releases the Martin Luther King records, the JFK records, and now it's the Jeffrey Epstein stuff that he campaigned on. It's only Donald J. Trump and Republicans who are literally trying to get to the truth, to bring justice to these victims who really justice is long overdue. And the Democrats, Liz, they're just doing it, or they thought they were doing it to get Trump. But again, had they had any of the information that would implicate our president, they would have used it in the last 4 years. They did everything else to him and his family, and that didn't work either. So this is going to backfire on them. I think it already is backfiring on them.
Thank you so much, Whip Time Emmer. It's good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining us. This is about as easy to follow as a weather vane in a hurricane. First, that was Democrat Stacey Plaskett downplaying why she talked to Jeffrey Epstein, and then Hakeem Jeffries flip-flopping, saying he didn't, and then he did, and then he said, yeah, he did speak with Democrat Plaskett over the Congresswoman letting Jeffrey Epstein coach her in questioning Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, during a 2019 hearing. And then that was Democrat Minority Whip Catherine Clark, not ready to respond to that. Plus, then you heard Democrat Jasmine Crockett claiming, well, Epstein was just Plaskett's constituent. Let's welcome back to the show Fox News contributor Joe Concha. Joe, great to have you back on. So should voters out there just take Democrats' word for it that a convicted sex trafficker and sex predator was just a constituent of Plaskett who happened to have her personal phone number and was texting her during that hearing? Joe, first of all, we got to point out Epstein's companies got $300 million in tax breaks from the U.S. Virgin Islands when Plaskett was the general counsel of its Economic Development Authority. What do you make of the Democrats' propaganda here?
Oh, man. I mean, this is going off the rails, isn't it? I mean, the old saying, Liz, is that when you're in a hole, stop digging. And Stacey Plaskett is halfway to China by now in that regard. The bottom line is that she was texting back and forth, as you just showed, with a convicted sex offender at the time. She took donations from Jeffrey Epstein as well. And she could say, well, just a constituent. But as you just showed, he's complimenting her outfit, how she looks. She's like, oh, thank you very much. Look, this is the lengths that Democrats will go to in order to get Donald Trump, even making an ally of a monster like Jeffrey Epstein. She looks horrible here, and all the legacy media apologies in the world for her ain't going to change the fact that Democrats look far worse right now than Donald Trump does in regards to Jeffrey Epstein.
You know, Joe, voters anecdotally say they want D.C. to move on from this. Stop the gotcha politics, fix America. But liberal media and Democrats want to keep using it to attack Trump. Because, Joe, under this new law, 30 days from now, the DOJ will release even more Epstein files. Democrats are running away from their ties to Epstein. Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, nearly 90% of Epstein's donations went to Democrats. So what do you think is going to come out of these files?
Well, we've already seen Hakeem Jeffries took donations from Jeffrey Epstein after he was indicted, for example. We're going to see a lot of smoke. What I think we won't see is anything that is going to be very, very negative about Donald Trump as far as all the innuendo that Democrats are throwing at him. And the reason why I know this, Liz, and that we know this in general, people that are sane and sober, is because when Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, 2020, and 2024, all those three times when Democrats were in power, they didn't weaponize this against Trump. If there was anything in there against him, they would have used it by now, and they have not. So this is going to be like Russia collusion all over again, a big nothing burger that will eventually boomerang back to Democrats who have been hyping this for weeks and now are realizing that, uh-oh, we look a far, far more culpable here than Donald Trump ever could in regards to that man you see in that screen, that monster Jeffrey Epstein.
And, Joe, there's also this Democrat Jasmine Crockett's off-the-wall merry-go-round explanation for why she falsely smeared EPA Chief Lee Zeldin, falsely claiming Jeffrey Epstein had donated to him. It was a different Jeffrey Epstein, a Dr. Epstein, who donated years after the other convicted sex offender was already dead. Watch this.
Who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio.
Listen, I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein, just so that people understand when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled. And that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies. Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people.
That's absolutely nuts, what she just said. It is off the wall crazy. There are so many twists and turns in what she just said, you know, that you got to wonder if voters who voted for her should rethink why they voted for her.
Yeah, Liz. I mean, she has two things right now, just from that clip alone. A cartoon character and a prolific liar. And those aren't good from a political perspective. And let me tackle this from a media perspective, by the way. Jasmine Crockett is like the next Michael Avenatti. Remember him? Stormy Daniels, the sleazy lawyer, was on CNN and MSNBC in the span of 1 year hundreds of times. Why? Because he said provocative things about Donald Trump. And now Jasmine Crockett is the next shiny object. This is a lawmaker who mocked the sitting governor of her state because he's paralyzed in a wheelchair, called him Governor Hot Wheels. She once said that she wished that somebody would take out Elon Musk for her birthday. That's a direct call for violence. And now she just throws out that a Jeffrey Epstein donated to Lee Zeldin, who's the acting EPA commissioner right now, except as you noted, that was Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, God rest his soul, and not the actual Jeffrey Epstein that we're all talking about. Instead of apologizing for it, she doubles down on CNN, and that ridiculous network and Caitlin Collins doesn't even push back. So she'll continue to get on cable news. She'll continue to be a star. Lying be damned, integrity be damned, Liz.
You know, and also there's this. Larry Summers, that's Clinton's former Treasury Secretary, former director of Obama's National Economic Council. He was caught texting Jeffrey Epstein from 2013 to 2019 after he was convicted for sexual assault and sex trafficking. And, you know, so he's getting romantic advice from Jeffrey Epstein, also caught making sexist comments on those text chains with Jeffrey Epstein. This is how Larry Summers opened his class at Harvard. Watch this.
You will have seen my statement of regret, expressing my shame with respect to what I did in communication with Mr. Epstein, and that I've said that I'm going to step back from public activities for a time, but I think it's very important to fulfill my teaching obligations. And so, with your permission, we're going to go forward.
He was teaching students at Harvard. Now he's stepping away from Harvard. He's stepping off the board of OpenAI. He's stepping away from the Center for American Progress and other entities. How would the left react if Summers was a Republican?
Oh, boy, if this was like Scott Bessent, for example, yeah, we would see 24/7 coverage, front page news, the editorial pages of the New York Times and Washington Post talking about what a horrible person this is. And I barely see any coverage on Larry Summers outside of this network, Fox News, and maybe a handful of other places. So, yeah, that is the double standard that we're dealing with here, Liz. And his career is done. Let's face it.
All right, Joe Concha, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Welcome back. Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Coming to you live from Washington. It is Wednesday, November 19th. We are coming to you from our nation's capital this morning, and it is 8 a.m. on the button on the East Coast. The Trump administration is weighing IPOs for mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, possibly as soon as the first quarter, I'm told. But billionaire investor Bill Ackman has a different plan, and he laid it out in a new roadmap on X yesterday. Ackman says now is not the right time for the Treasury to sell their stakes in both firms. Instead, he wants Treasury to cancel the government's senior preferred shares, exercise warrants to buy up to 79.9% of the common stock, and relist both companies on the New York Stock Exchange. Ackman says that approach could generate about $300 billion for taxpayers without rushing into a new IPO. Joining me now is Pershing Square Capital Management founder and CEO, the man himself, Bill Ackman. Bill, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
And I want to start off with your plans for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Tell us how to see the most possible growth of these giants in mortgages right now.
Sure. If you look back, the president explained that he had the opportunity to sell these companies for $100 billion during his first administration, and he very intelligently chose not to. He didn't want to leave a lot of money on the table. But he didn't get to finish his goal of privatizing both companies. Now he has that opportunity in his second administration. But our view is rushing to an IPO is a mistake. We think these entities are going to be worth a lot more over time. And the administration has a few objectives. They want to show taxpayers how much value has been created. They want to mark to market, as Howard Lutnick has referred to it. But they want to do that in a way that minimizes, actually really eliminates risk that mortgage spreads would widen. In our view, basically, if you try to get an IPO done now, I think there's risk. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before these companies can be regular way public companies out of conservatorship. Our view is you can't take them public when the government, has them in this sort of suspended animation of conservatorship. But you can take some important steps. Number one, the most significant overhang on Fannie and Freddie, which the president referred to in a letter in November of 2021, is the fact that the Obama administration came in just after these entities became profitable again and expropriated 100% of their profits, something called the net worth sweep. And Trump has called that theft. I think it's an accurate description. Secretary Mnuchin in the first administration stopped the theft, which is what enabled these entities to rebuild very significant amount of capital over the last number of years, 10 years or so. Now they're getting closer to a moment when they could be regular way public companies, but there are a lot of steps that need to be taken. The capital levels need to be reset. We need to have the right management teams in place, the right boards of directors. We have to have, these companies lost a lot of money for shareholders, so before you do the biggest IPO of all time, you want shareholders to be excited about what's going on. We think an IPO would be unsuccessful. So our view is, simple step. Recognize the theft, reverse the theft, if you will, by accounting for all the payments that have been made to the government. The government lent $191 billion. The entities, the Fannie and Freddie, paid back $301 billion. That's actually, it was supposed to be a 10% return. The government got almost a 12% return. Let the government keep the extra $25 billion. They exercise their warrants, and then they uplist on the New York Stock Exchange. The New York Stock Exchange, of course, would be delighted to have these entities trade there. Then you start building an institutional base of demand for the companies. We think the stocks will trade, as much as into the 40s per share, which would be an enormous value creation. They would have something approaching a $400 billion market cap, and they would continue to grow in value over time, and that gives the administration time to work through the capital rules, make sure that there's no threat to the mortgage market. So I totally agree with the president's ambitions here. This achieves his objectives in a kind of slow and steady approach, which I think is very consistent with, what the Treasury Secretary would like to see as well.
I mean, there's also, not exactly clarity when you take a look at each company. I mean, they're not the same, right? I mean, recently we saw these stocks sell off because there was worry in the market that Freddie Mac is not as strong as Fannie Mae. So the two companies assess their profitability potential and their strength, because they're not the same.
They're not. They're actually quite similar. Actually, Freddie grew its guarantee book much more quickly than Fannie over the last number of years. The result is that Freddie is further away from the capital that's required for them to meet sort of a fortress level balance sheet. Freddie, in our view, is almost there today. But there's actually, if you think about it, in a world of AI, these are businesses that could be massively optimized in terms of made more efficient, more profitable, better at underwriting, and ultimately delivering a value to the shareholders and ultimately to the mortgage borrowers that's much more effective. Let's give them the time to do that while the government retains its 79.9% stake in both companies. Then we can have there's no real rush. The government doesn't need the cash from Fannie and Freddie. What Secretary Lutnick talked about was, I think Jan Fox, or maybe it was CNBC, but he talked about creating a mark-to-market. These entities are already public, so the notion, it's not really an initial public offering. Really what we need is they trade in the pink sheets. And many shareholders, many institutions can invest in a company in the pink sheets. We're saying, look, list them on the New York Stock Exchange. That creates transparency, visibility. You build an institutional base of support for the companies. Analysts start covering Fannie and Freddie. They start to be in a position to become index eligible. But we do it in a very safe way. They're still in conservatorship. The government owns 79.9% of both companies. The government's still completely in control. That gives us the time, that gives the Treasury Secretary, that gives the FHFA, Director Pulte, time to kind of finalize what the right capital levels are. We want these entities to have fortress level balance sheets, but you don't want them to be massively overcapitalized because they'll never be able to earn an adequate return on an overstated capital level. And that's where the rules are now. That needs to be reassessed. It can't happen in 90 days. It can't happen by Q1.
And these are enormous. These are enormous companies, and you also don't want this to disrupt the overall mortgage market, right? At this very fragile moment in time, I spoke with Secretary Bessent about this just recently. Here's what Scott Bessent told me. Watch. We're talking about a $30 billion deal. Do you want to keep some stake there in Fannie and Freddie?
That's what the banks have advised so far. A $30 billion deal would be one of the biggest deals, maybe the biggest deal in history. And these are very large companies, valuations in the hundreds of billions of dollars. So if we were to sell a 3 to 6% stake, it would work out to at least that. Well, every bank's going to be, all the big banks are going to be part of something that's this size, and we're honing in on that. The president's been busy doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and he can multitask better than anyone I've ever seen.
Your reaction, Bill?
Yeah, look, I have enormous respect for Secretary Epstein. He's done an amazing job. I can't point to anything that he's done that's not been executed really very well. So I think he's a star. And I also know that he's a very measured Treasury Secretary, and you want a Treasury Secretary that's not in a rush. So, if you look at what the president did in the first administration, took a very important step in stopping this net worth sweep. Well, I'm suggesting just take another step. What's interesting is the step I'm advising can happen before the end of the year. Right, the accounting for the repayment of the preferred, the exercise of the warrants, and even the listing on the New York Stock Exchange. The president could ring the bell before the end of the year. It would be a major victory for the president. He could announce, he could show the taxpayer hundreds of billions of dollars of value that shareholders own. And those shareholders are 80% U.S. government. I'll also point out that there are millions of small investors that have owned this stock and have been decimated. This was a, every American type, blue chip stock before the financial crisis. There are a lot of long-suffering shareholders that have owned it, and then there's some institutions that have piled in more recently. Capital Group has bought a major position in the pink sheets. They're one of the few institutions that have been able to invest in the companies in the pink sheets. So let's build a base of institutional support, but there's no rush. The government doesn't need cash, right? What the president's trying to achieve here is to show the taxpayer how much value that's been created. This is an asset that's going to grow in value very significantly over the next decade. I'd rather this become a sovereign wealth fund asset where we show it on the balance sheet of the U.S. government. It's going to grow more quickly. We're going to earn a higher return on Fannie Freddie stock than the cost of the 10-year Treasury, right? So one way to delever you don't need the cash to pay back U.S. government debt. What you'd like to do is offset our liabilities by growing some assets. And Scott has actually talked about a U.S. sovereign wealth fund. This would be a fantastic asset. Really, it could even be a permanent holding. You can envision this is a great asset for the country. Retain the 79.9% stake that the government got for bailing out these companies. Let the taxpayer benefit, as opposed to selling it before these institutions are at a minimum. Let's optimize them before we think about selling something that belongs to the taxpayer.
Well, there's also, policy changes that you'd like to see as a result of this. Like, for example, you want revised capital rules to allow the GSEs to earn adequate returns. What specific changes do you want to see in terms of capital rules, Bill?
Sure. So the capital rule is set at basically 4.5% of the outstanding guarantees, which is a level that is well in excess of what is necessary. The capital rule prior to the financial crisis was well below what was necessary. It was at 45 basis points. So the response to a crisis was, okay, we'll just raise the capital levels tenfold. The problem with that is that in order for these to be sustainable enterprises, they have to earn an adequate return on that capital. But that level of capital is so high that basically the government would have to raise the guarantee fee in order for the returns to be adequate. The problem with raising guarantee fees is every basis point of increase in a guarantee fee is an extra basis point of mortgage interest that the borrower is going to pay. So I think guarantee fees are already as high as they should be. At the current level of guarantee fees, at a capital level about 250 basis points, the entities would have the benefit of they could have survived multiples of the losses of the great financial crisis. So that I call that a fortress level balance sheet. But it's still a level of capital where they can earn an adequate return. And that's something that needs to be finalized. That's a process. Could it take 6 months? Could it take 9 months? Something in order of that. It can't happen overnight. You don't want to rush it. That's where risk to the mortgage market comes in. In fact, mortgage spreads are wider than they should be. I think part of that is all the uncertainty around Fannie and Freddie. I think taking a positive step forward, creating more transparency about these entities, listing them on an exchange where analysts can cover them, oversee them, investors can invest in them, I think would be an important step and will actually help lower mortgage spreads. So the interesting point is, by leaving them in conservatorship and listing them on the exchange, you get the best of both worlds. There's literally zero risk of mortgage spreads widening. There's the potential for them narrowing. And you get the benefit of the president's goal of showing how much value has been created. And he's going to look very smart because these entities were valued at, he could have sold them for $100 billion, 5 years ago. And now he's going to show entities that, we expect them to have something approaching a $400 billion value. As long as the administration sort of lays out, kind of the plan going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, the mortgage market has been out of reach for so many people. Certainly, as you know, mortgage rates have spiked. We're looking at around 6.9% on the long-term mortgage rate bill. But do you think mortgage rates move if the Fed keeps cutting? What is your take on the Federal Reserve? As now we're looking at a divided Fed in terms of potentially cutting rates next month in December for a potential third cut. Are you expecting it?
I think it's a close call. I think I am concerned about jobs. There's clearly underlying weakness in the economy. I'm much less concerned about inflation. I think the goal of taking the inflation rate back to 2% is not a practical goal. The world has become a much more expensive place to do business, if you will. Really think geopolitically. Every country around the world is spending, a meaningful percentage of their GDP finally on building national defense, and I think that's a more expensive world. And so I just think inflation will be persistently higher than this arbitrary 2% goal. But I'm very comfortable in a world where the United States has 3% inflation. I'm not comfortable in a world where we have a lot of unemployed young people, and not just young people.
Yeah, great point. Bill, it takes me to the broader agenda of President Trump, where the president has put national security as really the pinpoint of the way he's playing out this agenda. What are your thoughts on the president's agenda, and are you investing alongside what you see coming out of the Trump administration as well?
So I'm a big fan of the president. I think he's done an incredible job, and the amount of achievements in a very short period of time. Look geopolitically, peace in the Middle East, very rapid things like fixing the border issues. I think he's really done an incredible job. We're long-term investors in the country. We don't really pick stocks on the basis of what we think the president might do. We own these sort of very, what we call durable, growth businesses. We're a big beneficiary. If the economy is stronger, we do poorly. We do less well, let's put it that way, if the economy does poorly. I think a lot of what the president's doing is very pro-growth. I've said before that he's the most pro-business president we've ever had. Look at we have a lot of tailwinds coming out of, going into 2026, right? We have this massive AI investment, which is definitely good for the economy. And it's actually good for a lot of, I would say, middle-class jobs, construction jobs. So I think that's going to be a big boost. We have some tailwinds from the infrastructure bill from the last administration, where the shovels are only starting to go into the ground. We have a big deregulation push, which I think is going to be a very big positive. You have a much more constructive FTC, which is leading to, I think there's a ton of deals. You're starting to see many of them, but I think there are many more coming. That kind of a pipeline of transactions, obviously very good for the stock market. And then you have the productivity effects of AI, which are starting to appear, and you're going to see profit margins of many businesses go up significantly. I think the biggest risk, however, is jobs. And I was at the dinner last night. The president talked about the Saudi prince's announcement of $1 trillion of investment. And the president was focused, look, I'm not focused on profits. I'm focused on jobs. That's really his number one right now, and it should be. I think that the biggest threat to the country is the fact that if you own assets today in America, you're very happy, right? You got a 401k plan. You're in the stock market. You're doing great. You own a house. You're doing great. You don't own assets in America, you're being left behind. And actually, one of the topics I talked to the president about at that dinner we had with Wall Street CEOs, and something I think he's quite interested in, is creating for every American having a 401k plan. Why shouldn't a Uber driver, a restaurant worker? We need every American to participate in capitalism. And if we don't have every American participate in capitalism, what you have is you have a group of Americans who do very well, meaningful percentage of the country, and a group of Americans who are resentful. And that leads to socialism. And we've seen some indications of that is close to home as the city in which I love and live in New York City.
Of course. Right, and Zohran Mamdani's mayoral victory in New York City has a lot of people worrying that these policies, which are going to take effect in January, will mean an exodus out of New York. His housing agenda includes a $100 billion plan to freeze rents, massively expand government-built units. The proposals could crush the rental market, squeeze small landlords, and create new uncertainty in New York. Bill, you've been outspoken about this, certainly, because we're talking about a completely new turn in New York. Do you think that this plays out the way we expect in New York?
Look, I think I give Mamdani credit for identifying a very important issue, which is affordability. And I give him big debits for his approach to solving the problem. There's a lot of just empirical data that we see in cities around the country, Austin, in the Southeast, and other places where there's been a big boom in construction of apartments, and the result is rents go down. And in fact, even luxury apartments, there's very strong evidence that even if you build, you don't just necessarily build affordable housing. You build a ton of market rate apartments, brand new apartments, and what it does is it actually reduces rents on kind of the older apartment stock, which creating more affordability. And the way to bring rents down is to increase supply, not to reduce supply. And when you send a message that you're going to freeze rents, that's not inspiring for real estate developers. They're not going to put a shovel in the ground and build anything in that environment. So you're going to have constrained supply, and therefore rents are going to go up, except for the frozen rents, which in New York City, assuming he can execute on this, it's 25% of the rental stock. So you have 75% of the people are going to pay higher rents. 25% are going to have frozen rents, and then you have people like Mamdani. In our view, like this is not a guy who should have a rent-regulated apartment, and he's got a $2,300, well below market rent-stabilized apartment. So a lot of rent-stabilized apartments, unfortunately, go to connected people as opposed to people who deserve them.
And then you might have homelessness on buses, by the way. Why wouldn't they just live on the bus? But, Bill, I want to get your take on the broader markets because, obviously, the AI trade has been driving lots of euphoria in the stock market. It sounds like you're bullish going into the new year. Are you poised to put new money to work in equities going into 26?
Yeah, look, I think it's been an interesting market. You've had some enormously successful companies that have generated huge returns this year. You've had a lot of stocks that are down a ton. So I think it's a very good market for stock pickers. We're very concentrated investors, and we're seeing some very high quality businesses showing up at very attractive prices. And so we'll absolutely be putting money to work. We've actually got approaching 15% cash, and we're looking at a number of very interesting things.
So what would it take for you to put that 15% cash to work? A big sell-off?
No, just finishing our due diligence on a company we really have wanted to own for years, now available at a bargain price, something like that.
I see. Right, exactly. Well, that's why I've done a big sell-off, getting an opportunity to get back in on certain areas. And do you think it will be, tech, AI driving things here or something else?
Look, I think there are a lot of tailwinds behind the economy. I think the Fed probably should cut rates. I think the uncertainty about the Fed is an overhang on the market. And I think, people sort of scratching their heads about the AI investment. Is this, is this a frightening investment, or is this, the future? And then I think that this whole sort of private credit thing is a bit of an overhang, right? You've seen some cracks in private credit that, concern people. People are always looking, in a market that's done generally very well over a long period of time, people are looking for risk. But I think the economic tailwinds are very favorable. I think we will have the Fed cutting rates, if not end of year, sooner rather than later. I think they should. The president is very, business fundamentally is a confidence game in a good way. And the president, I think, gives business leaders a lot of confidence about making investments, about making acquisitions. I failed to mention the tax bill. The tax bill is hugely pro-economy, right? Because an airplane, you can deduct 100% of the, you can take the depreciation at the year that you buy the plane. Same thing for factories and real estate. And, that bill was announced and became law, but it takes time for it to have an economic effect, right? You don't the next day do something. So I think you're going to see some real tailwinds, M&A activity, the tax bill, AI, productivity, and just the general confidence that the president instills in business leaders.
Absolutely. And the big, beautiful bill will start playing out in 26. So we'll really see the impact of all of his tax changes for the tax code. Sure. Bill, you've been prolific on X, all the way down to giving us your dating advice the other day. You told us your most successful one-liner, "May I meet you?" And that post is sparking a lot of conversation. You say, I hear many young men that they find it difficult to meet young women in a public setting. The online culture has has destroyed the ability to spontaneously meet strangers. So you wanted to share a few words that you used to do before you were married, and you would say, "May I meet you?" Well, it's sparking its own meme universe, getting millions of views, fueling a lot of debate online. What do you think about this buzz that you've created around your dating advice, Bill?
Well, look, I'm very happy about it, and I'm happy about it because, you know, we have a generation of people that are, you know, sitting at home on Twitter, or more likely on maybe Instagram or whatever, and you know, looking at people living sort of fake lives. And the reality is, human interaction is just critically important. You look at things like the you know, population decline that we're experiencing globally, and I think you can go back to social media being a primary cause. The younger generation, they're not having enough relationships, they're not having enough sex, they're not getting married, they're not, you know, moving in together, and you know, that's the death knell for the globe, and also just happiness. You know, I'm, you know, feel like one of the most fortunate people in the universe because I met an amazing, you know, woman 8 years ago, and very transformational in my life. And we have you know, now a fourth daughter, so which is really an amazing thing. And that's not going to happen online. Okay, it's going to happen because, and actually, you have a lot of people wandering around, I would say, lonely, that would love for someone to come up with them and introduce themselves. And I think it just shows the virality of this "May I meet you?" And by the way, it really did work. Okay, because it's
so you would just walk up to women and say, "May I meet you?"
I did, and as long as I was on, I had a better track record as long as I was on something moving. So if there's an airplane, an elevator, an escalator, a subway, something about that increased the probability of it being effective, and it sparks a conversation, and that's really what I was trying to do.
Well, exactly. Rather than going online and swiping right or swiping left. Great gems of information from you this morning, Bill. It's great to have you. I hope you'll come back soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, Bill Ackman joining us this morning in New York.
Just as mamdani is set to meet with Trump in the Oval Office today, the House has indeed voted to condemn socialism. Aisha Hosni joining us now from Capitol Hill. Aisha, the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, how did he vote?
He actually voted yes in favor of condemning socialism. He was in favor of this resolution. And I will tell you that the entire Democratic leadership also voted yes along with him, which was a big surprise. And the Democrats are pretty evenly split. About 98 of them voted against this. 85 Democrats voted yes. It's a big message, huge message to Democrat socialist Zohran Mamdani as he makes his way to the White House later today. And when he was asked about it actually at the airport, Stuart, about Congress voting to condemn socialism, he said, "Look, I'm just focused on the issues of New Yorkers in New York." So this resolution, Stuart, was brought to you today by Florida Republican Maria Salazar. She is the daughter of Cuban exiles, and her resolution declared that Congress denounces socialism in all its forms. Well, several Democrats were making the argument that this text was just too broad, it was too vague, that it would encompass social programs like Social Security, Medicare, SNAP, even fire departments, public parks, and they did not want to denounce it.
So I cannot vote for a resolution that can be interpreted as condemning Medicare as a socialist policy.
Those are social programs. That is not that socialism is going to be the ideology that we're going to be following. Socialism is tied to communism, period.
And if you thought that we were done with socialism, think again. Axios reports that D.C. Councilwoman Janice Lewis-George, a self-proclaimed Democrat socialist, is planning to launch a Mamdani-style run for mayor of the district. So we will see how Congress and really the president feel about a potential Democrat socialist mayor here in the district.
It's fascinating, and you are loving every minute of it. I can tell.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Aisha. Republican New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis joins us now. Congresswoman, I've been editorializing this morning, that Trump should not give Mamdani taxpayer money because he's going to ruin New York. But if he denies money to New York, your constituents get hurt. What do you say?
Well, look, I think that it's one thing to say we're not going to give money to fund a socialist and communist agenda. We're not going to give money so New York City can purchase private properties and turn them into communes, or purchase supermarkets and have them be government run, or seize the means of production. Those are things that Mamdani wants. However, when it comes to public safety, counterterrorism, public housing, transportation infrastructure, and hospitals, we're going to fight for our fair share of taxpayer money. And so I've had this fight with some of my colleagues already here in the House, because they do want to punish New York City, because half of the voters voted for this guy. But guess what? The other half didn't, and we shouldn't suffer as a result. And I'm going to be, as the only New York City member representing our city in Washington, fighting to make sure that New York City gets what it needs, but at the same time pushing back on Mamdani's crazy radical agenda.
Fair enough. Congresswoman, a New York City synagogue became the target of an anti-Semitic mob Wednesday night. About 200 people hurled insults and made threats at a Jewish group trying to get into the synagogue. You're on the House Republican Israel caucus. You worry that things like this will get worse in New York City under Mamdani?
Well, look, certainly he has had his own rhetoric that has been anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. And, you know, the day after the election, there were swastikas painted on a school that serves constituents of mine. It's just outside my district, in Hakeem Jeffries' district. And we went out there and we condemned this immediately, and it's important that we condemn this, all leaders, Republicans and Democrats, because I am concerned about a rise in anti-Semitism and some of these bad actors who align themselves with Hamas, using this as an opportunity, thinking they got some type of cover from Mamdani being the mayor. So we can't allow these people to feel empowered to be able to do this and to attack, whether it's verbally or physically, their Jewish neighbors.
What do you think of the vote in the House just an hour or so ago, voting to condemn socialism? It totally split the Democrats.
It did, and I spoke on the House floor, and I made the point that he calls himself a socialist. You know who else called themselves socialist? Well, Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, and they did the exact same things that Mamdani says he wants to do. They did seize the means of production, and it led to hyperinflation and to economic collapse. They did take over supermarkets to have them government run, and it led to the shelves being empty and people starving to the point where Venezuelans lost on average 19 to 24 pounds. They did do a lot of the things, even this free universal health care push, they promised the people that, and guess what? Now they don't have doctors, they don't have medical supplies, and they don't have medication, and it's a horror show. So it's important to point out how socialism has failed in other countries. New York City opted to learn the hard way what socialism is. It would have been better if they just looked to Venezuela or picked up a history book to see where it failed everywhere, including my mother's homeland of Cuba. And communism, by the way, is no different. It's worse, right? But socialism is the first step to communism. Socialism is communist light. And the Democrats, unfortunately, spent an hour on the floor defending socialism, and then 100 of them couldn't vote to condemn it, and that is shameful. It tells you exactly where the Democrat Party is right now.
Yeah,
they've embraced socialism.
It's going in that direction. Looks like it for sure. Congresswoman, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.